evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the PRC-IAPN Radio Roundtable. Tonight's discussion is a continuation of last week, actually, but we are going to discuss whether or not spirit and soul, are they actually the same thing or are they different? Because that question came up last week. So first we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves.
I am Reverend Silver Wolf, the founder and owner of Iowa Pagan News Radio, IAPN Radio, and also Prairie Land Radio Network.
I'm Reverend Shadow Wolf. I am the Western or the East or the West Coast director of the Pagan Rights Coalition.
I am Roderick Edwards. I'm an author of over 20 books and the non-pagan token here today.
It's a good one. Sierra Diaz, owner and founder of We Are Witch, We Are Young Witches, My Craft, We Are Witch Latino, Grey Witch from Boston. Peace.
And I'm Edward Sott, head of the PRC UPCC, and also the head host of the Roundtable. At this point, we're going to get down to the discussion. Now, last week we discussed the fact is that we were talking about the difference between spirit and soul and what the soul was. We were trying to define it last week. Now, one of the things that was brought to the attention was we were still wondering, is the spirit separate from the soul or not? So I wanted everybody's insight on what they feel is the situation with that. Is the spirit actually a separate thing from the soul, or is the soul the spirit?
I could take this example. This was earlier today. Earlier I saw a roach. I decided that roach is fake. Now, did that roach have a soul to live? Did it have a spirit to thrive? I wasn't the judge of that because I didn't know. But as soon as I stepped on it, it was automatically dead. Now, did that bug have something in it that gave it life besides just the internal organs it has? Because us as humans, we have life. I could imagine dogs, cats, insects, birds, whales, seals have something in them that is supernatural that cannot be explained, like a soul or a spirit. But I lean towards soul because it's something we can feel, like we discussed last week. I think a spirit is something that when you pass, the spirit can go wherever it needs to go if that's the case. But a soul, I think, has a corresponding more connection with us than we want to give it credit for. So I think that bug I just stepped on may have some kind of a soul in it because as soon as I stepped on it, it was gone. Just like us. We die, there's no weight to us, there's no life, there's no breath. So why can't the same be discussed with animals?
Good point.
I think the soul and the spirit are two separate things because we talk about, you'll hear people make references about you killed the spirit or you sucked the soul out of it. So I think that they're two separate things that are composed of one. So think of a container that has two different elements in it. That while they're contained in the same area, they're still two separate entities of their self. Because your soul is basically, what comprises you. And, they talk about people being old souls, especially we talk about how our soul might be X amount of years old because of past lives we live, so on and so forth, those of us that believe in reincarnation. But we don't talk about the spirit in the same sense as we do our soul. So are they the same thing? I don't think so. I think that they're two totally separate entities, but that they are housed kind of in the same area with each other. They're just different.
All right. So depending where we're coming from, so if we come from Greek philosophy, we have Plato who mentions about the soul in the body, and he understands the soul as sort of like Shadow was saying, the two different circles. You have actually three circles. So you have the body on the outside, the soul in the next inside ring, and the spirit on the very inside. Everything has a soul, according to the Greek philosophy, but not everything has a spirit, is according to Greek philosophy. Then Christianity, and not just Christianity, I'm sorry, let's go back a little further. Hebrew, Judaism, defined it as three different things. The body, the soul, and the spirit. And it calls it the Basar, I'm trying to remember, Nefesh, and the Rosh. So the three things. Or we might know it as the Soma, which is the body, the Psyche, and the Pneuma, That's how we would know it, more likely. Or we're going to get more in English, because the body is the five senses, touch, smell, hear, whereas the soul is your mind and your emotions, your expressions, your will, your conscience, your psyche, whereas your spirit is this longing connection to something else, whether it's God or the universe. That's what your spirit does. But your soul, everything has that. That's what we talked about the last week. You can look into an animal's eyes, you see there's something there. They understand they're alive. They have a connection with you, but they may not have a spirit, because they may not have a longing for anything beyond being your friend or getting food from you or whatever it is. You're having love from you, care from you, but they may not understand like humans do. They have the longing for something divine. We don't know what that divine is, but that's what's different, and that's what I was trying to get at last week. That there's three parts, and it's not something new. Even again, the Jews believe this a long time ago.
But real quick, I think that's a consciousness type thing. When it comes to that belief, when people want to believe in a soul or a spirit, they want to believe or something that's said, and like we just said, I think that's more of an option for people to think about.
And I would actually agree with the basically the three circles. We got the body, we've got the soul, and we've also got the mind, which would be the spirit. That's the way I look at it.
See, one of the things that I find curious is that, okay, if we separate it in mind, body, spirit, or we separate it as in soul, spirit, and body, right? Now, we're basically saying that the soul is the aspect of the mind or the mental, or somewhat of the mental or the will side of things.
That's how it's been understood, yes.
Where it is correlated with the emotions, correlated with the aspect of, as Kieran said, the emotions, as you said, very similarly, the will and the ability to think and stuff like that, where the spirit just is in actuality all the energy within the body itself that comprises everything in between. So
exactly, it's the intercell, it's the core.
The core, like the Earth's core,
right?
If you will, you have the core of the Earth, you have the mantle, and then you have the crust. So
I'm not making all this stuff up. There's actual word for this. It's called tripartite. It's an actual philosophy of understanding that there's three elements. Whereas they're like, for instance, Hindus have a concept of dualism. There's the body and the soul, and that's it. That's what they have. It's two parts. But when you get to Hebrewism, Christianity, Islam, which they're all connected, obviously, they all have this concept of the tripartite, the three things.
Yeah, so the triune, the whole idea behind the triunic thing actually does occur in almost all religions, actually, in all philosophies too. I've noticed that myself. And there is a separation between the mind, body, and spirit in that regard. The body is the vessel that we use to contain the other two things.
I wouldn't go as far though to say that the soul is what it controls your will, because and this is why I say Jessica actually asked a really good question where she said, would you consider your spirit your will? And for me, yes, I would, because if I have a willingness to do something and somebody kills my spirit to do that, they're killing my willingness. Like if I use a phrase, you're killing my will, my spirit to do said thing, you're killing the enjoyment that I have in doing it, the willingness to do that, because there might be a time where I'm willing to do that, but then when you kill that spirit or that willingness to do it, so I think that spirit actually is what controls our will more so than just our connection or that longing, like you said, Roderick, to something supernatural. I think it controls a little bit more than just that longing, because if you look at how things are worded, a lot of things are worded, the way that they're worded and stuff actually connects back to certain, theological or whatever teachings that somebody might have been taught at some point.
What makes all this even more difficult is that people have used, and down through history even now, have used the word soul and spirit interchangeably. So we can't tell. Yeah. Sometimes you can't tell which is which. So we're trying to separate them here and define that there's a difference. And in Christianity, at least, everything. At least every human being is born with a body and a soul, but not everything is born with a spirit. A spirit has to be activated, at least in Christianity. That's the reason why they say born again or become a new creature. Everything has a soul. Even every human has a soul, but there's some people that never get the spirit. They never have a spirit,
Right.
at least in Christianity. They come out.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
sorry, go
different. That's the
You're-
different part.
You're talking about the phrase that the Holy Spirit comes to live in you.
Well, that they're never activated. Some people are born in the world as a body. They have a soul, which is their emotions and how they behave, their morals, and everything else. But for whatever reason, they never become alive as a spirit because God never makes them that way, according to Christianity.
Yeah, I was going to say by whose definition?
Well, again, here can I quote one verse just so we understand?
Well, there's some people that I know in Puerto Rico from a childhood perspective. Their views are very different. So it's like everybody's saying right here. Can't no one be a right or a wrong?
Oh, you had a comment?
Good.
Yeah, basically, no. But Patsy just got done saying maybe the subconscious is the soul, or yet our third eye is the bracelet to the energy that contains our soul. But our spirit and that path is different. And I think I see where she's coming from with that. And the fact that, yeah, every living being has a soul. That's a proven fact. And the spirit is what basically it gives us our, it defines who we are. If that makes sense to everybody.
I think you're actually making some sense here, Earl, with that, and I'm going to clarify something here on this regard. If you look at the animistic societies, right, which believed everything possessed a spirit, not necessarily a soul, but a spirit. Okay, the spirit defined the energy of everything. Okay, in animistic society. Now the soul became a different entity entirely, which Jessica says, but they say they broke your spirit, which would be your will. And I kind of agree with that. I kind of actually agree with that, Jessica. Thank you for that comment. Because, and thank you, Shadow Wolf, for bringing that up too about the will. Because one of the things that I've noted is the soul itself. Roderick, you said the soul is controlled by basically the emotional center.
It's not controlled. I'm not going to use the word controlled. It's the expression of those things. Yes.
Well, yeah, the emotional control center of humanity,
Right.
or of anything, for that matter.
That's how it's been understood in Greek philosophy and Christian philosophy as well. Yeah.
Right, where spirit is an energy, the energy force, and the entire essence of mankind, of life kind. And I'm going to say life kind in that regard because all life possesses spirit, according to most beliefs. Okay, so when but the problem is like you said earlier, Roderick, we tended to melt the two words together in regards to soul and spirit, that they become almost unified. So what we're trying to do here is discuss whether or not they are a unification of the same, or one part is separate from the other, and if they are, right, where do we place that separation, and where do they actually work in communion with each other?
A friend of mine put it this way: everybody's born with a soul, but a spirit is not a gift that everybody bestows.
I could see that, but then let me pose this question to the panel: is we talk about people being soulless, and so then it would be the question would bear or would come to mind of, if somebody in fact is soulless, how are they still alive? That's where that I think that there's two different parts, which are the spirit and the soul.
That's what I'm getting
and
at.
The spirit is the driving part that helps us live, that brings to life the body that we live in, and the soul is just this incorporeal thing that passes from body to body to body, wherein the spirit is the thing that actually gives us life. And they talk about you can watch the spirit leave somebody's eyes, or the light leave their eyes when they die. I've heard it called the spirit before. So that's kind of why I went with the basis that I have with it. You know, based on other things, is we talk about people being soulless, but then we also hear people talking about you killed my spirit, or I saw the spirit leave his or her eyes when she passed. So I mean, thoughts on that?
All right. That brings us back to the first part of that, which was the fact that which it answered my curiosity. Actually, sorry, I'm aroused out of curiosity of that because yes, they say you could say someone is soulless, right? But the soul transfers from one person, one body to the next body to the next body. But the spirit is the breath. What if I was to use it in the religious terminology? The spirit is the breath of life. Okay, where it actually is what applies the breath, life to existence. In other words, spirit is like the I would say, which would be the energy flow or the whole gasoline, if you will, for this vehicle.
Okay.
Okay, the soul that this vehicle is possessing also or using, right, is like the driver. Okay, basically the soul is the driver of the vehicle.
Okay.
I want to ask a question. If someone's soul is always light, like most religions say out there are souls that are tainted with darkness also.
Absolutely.
Or when we say soul, it's like, again, back in the theological perspective.
That's
They-
the good and bad, the yin and the yang.
Yeah, well, even
Yeah.
more that they understood as a soulless person, what we kind of did today, or in our modern day, you've come across people who don't seem to have any conscience. They can kill people. They can.
No, exactly.
Those people are soulless. They have a body, obviously. They do have emotions. They do have, but they have no remorse for anything. There's something wrong
No
with them.
emotion to that. Nope.
And that's what
So-
they say when they say soulless.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying. The soul is like the driver
Of
who's
those
either-
things.
who's either in control of the vehicle, right, and driving the vehicle, and the spirit being the gasoline that actually powers the vehicle and keeps the vehicle running the whole way through,
Right.
right? You know, a person who's in control of the vehicle is in control of their life, so their soul is in control, right? Their soul. The soulless one is the one who crashes that vehicle because the bottom line is they don't have that control of the vehicle.
Now, to throw more into it, theologically speaking, the difference between soul and spirit is every human being has a soul and a body, but you can actually have spirits that have never had a body and never had a soul. Like we saw angels or ghosts or things like they've never inhabited any kind of other form. That's all they've always been, just spirit. That's the difference.
So,
Whereas human beings are given spirits, as Diaz said, at some point, at least this is theologically said, at some point, some people are never given spirits. All they have is a body,
Just a soul.
soul, and they never become spiritual. That they don't even care about spiritual. There's no longing there, so that's it. They just live life, and then their soul does leave them, and maybe their soul does go somewhere else, but they don't have that spark, that spirit. That's the difference. But they say they broke, and I think that when they say you broke your spirit and broke your state, they've sucked the soul out of things. There's this city has more soul. That's because people are using those two words interchangeably. I don't think there's two different things in that respect.
Oh, I think we lost somebody.
Uh-oh, we lost Diaz.
Yeah, we lost Aaron. He'll be right back, though. I have a feeling.
here it comes.
His soul went away.
I'm so sorry about that.
He's been reincarnated. There he is. Diaz, you have the same
Like I
soul,
never left.
soul you left with? Same soul you just left with, right? All right.
Not
you're
easy. Not easy.
back. All right.
And I mean, if we're talking from a religious aspect, and like you said, where it says that the spirit is the breath of life, then I mean that further, would prove the point that I said earlier that the spirit and the soul are two separate entities. Because
Right.
if people are looking at the spirit as this is a breath of life, this is the thing that gives life to something, and the soul, like you said, is the driver, then they are in fact two separate entities, with the spirit being the innermost part that gives life to everything. Because without that breath of life, so to speak, then the soul wouldn't be able to drive anything. It would just be trapped out there in a void of nothingness, with nothing to attach to.
Right. And then obviously, theologically speaking, we have, I think everybody here has heard the Bible's concept of the tree of good and evil, which is the tree of conscience. So before that, supposedly there's just carnal human beings that were basically animals. And then here comes this tree of conscience. This is at least how it's described. And that's when the human beings got their soul. But their spirit was given to them already, the moment that the God breathed the life into them.
Well,
But what if that was the soul first and the spirit came in second?
actually, that's an interesting question, Sharon. But here's one of the things that I can relate to what Roderick just said. Okay,
Yes.
because according to theological discussions and according to that, when the breath of life was breathed into mankind had was inhabiting the earth along with the animals. He was given charge of everything,
But they had no
free will.
Mm-hmm.
No free will. Okay?
Right.
Now, because he had no free will, right? He was told, do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and do not eat from the tree of life. The tree of life, you would certainly die. Eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? Or tree of knowledge, and you may perish under your own volition, right? The whole idea behind that, getting them to actually eat from the knowledge of the tree of knowledge, was to give them, I would say, the soul. I would say to give them a soul, to make them more than angels, because he did not want, the Creator did not want another group of angels that he created,
just bodiless spirits.
So,
bodiless spirits that he had, right, just being existing. He wanted something more than that out of humanity. So he sent down, and this is where the soul would be the consciousness, the conscience, yes. The soul is definitely the conscience.
Yes, that's what we're getting at. Just good thing. Jessica got right at it.
but for you to say, Ed, that man and woman, because you had Adam and Eve, that they didn't have free will at that time, they had free will.
Everybody's born free will.
Yeah,
even before I think the Creator even said anything.
yeah, and the reason why I said they had free will is because if they didn't have free will, God would have never allowed them to eat from that tree of knowledge of good and evil. If in fact the Christian religion is, if we're basing it off of that for this particular part of the discussion, God would have never allowed that to happen. He would have stopped it before it even happened. There would have been no free, if there was no free will. But that's the thing, is if you actually look at everything that we do, regardless of what religion you follow, so on and so forth, or what path you follow, that's the one thing that every path talks about is man has free will, and always has and always will.
Yeah.
So man is the only possessor of soul, where the rest of the animals possess spirit.
No. I'm saying that the spirit is the free will. The soul,
the spirit is the free will. The soul
spirit,
is the
because if they going off the concept of when they ate from that tree, that they gained their soul. In order for them to have that free will to go and eat that tree, even though they were deceived, they would have had to have that free will before. And if all they had was that breath of life, that spirit in them, they had that free will, which means that the spirit is free will.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree on that one, actually. I don't think Roderick will either.
I do, but I'm not going to get an argument because there's a thing called Supralepsarianism. Wait, we're getting into the Christian theology.
What?
It's called Supralepsarianism.
Okay.
It's the idea that God not only knew about the fall, he planned it. He planned Adam and Eve to actually eat. But I don't want to get into it because I don't want to hijack that. This is not a discussion about Christianity. This is a discussion about the soul and the spirit.
I would say the spirit is the will. I will agree with that. And it's the will, period. Not necessarily free will, but the will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where I will agree with that. Okay, where I think the soul, like Jessica said, is the consciousness or the conscience.
Yeah,
our
because, I mean,
expressions, our moral decisions, all those things. Yeah, I think we've defined. I think we're all agreement of what the soul is. It's all those expressions, right?
well, the question that was posed at the beginning was, are they two separate entities of and of themselves? And yeah, I think they are. They might be comprised together, but I think they're two separate entities from each other.
Right, and that's what Plato believed too. He believed that everything had a body and a soul, but inside the soul, there's actually three more parts, which one of those parts was the spirit. That's what Plato believed, the Greek philosopher. So,
Okay, it's 25 minutes. We have to go to commercial.
uh-oh.
Yep.
Already?
And,
Is
Yep.
it going to be a commercial about soul food? All right, never mind.
Bad joke.
All right.
oh, brother, here we go. All right, stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back right after these words. Oh, brother, this is going to be one
Oh,
of those
brothers.
I just walked into this coffee shop. You'll never guess what I found. All the help is deeply engrossed in metaphysical times. You should too. I'm at the Egyptian, 475 Park Avenue in Idaho Falls, Idaho. You get your very own copy for free, and we're open till 10.
Sister Moon Apothecary and More is a collaboration of local island witches bringing you handcrafted tools for ritual, amazing apothecary, custom vinyl work, merchandise, and so much more. But we are not just an online store. We are a sisterhood, a platform, and a voice for everything that is magical. Join us for our famous Tarot Tuesdays from 11 to 4 Eastern Standard Time for a discounted reading with our amazing in-house intuitive reader and priestess, Wolf Spirit Energy, Beverly Oberling. You can find us on Facebook at Sister Moon Store or on the web at sistermoon.shop. So fly on over and stop in for a spell.
All right, we are back with our roundtable discussion, and yeah, this is going to be interesting tonight. So let's get right back into it, guys.
Okay. Anyway, we've now come to a conclusion that, well, all of us have reached the same conclusion that there are three essences that exist separately and substantially from each other. Okay, and that is there's the body, the spirit, and the soul. Spirit and soul, according to our thinking and our actual discussion, we've determined that the spirit and soul are two separate entities. One is the driving force of the will, which is the spirit, and the other one, of course, is the soul, which is the consciousness and the emotional and conscience level of the body, and then it goes to the body, the vehicle, which carries both. Okay, I think we all reached agreement on that. Now, one of the things that was brought up yesterday, or last week, I should say, sorry, yesterday, my bad. Last week's discussion, one of the things that was brought up was the fact is that do animals possess the same three aspects that we have? We know they possess bodies, but do they also possess a spirit and a soul?
I'm going to take this one. This falls on the Native American heritage that I follow, and most all Native Americans will tell you that all animals have a spirit. So there's not that much reference to a soul, so to say, but all animals, according to Native American beliefs, is that all living animals have a spirit.
I'll give you a good example. Every time we butcher a pig for Christmas in Puerto Rico, the butcher actually sits and prays to the spirits for thanks for this abundance meal that we're about to eat, and let the spirit actually flow to where it needs to go. So there's a respectful view on that I agree with.
I'm gonna flip this one upside down real fast. So I think that they both have a spirit and a soul, and the reason why I say that is because in some paths and belief systems that have reincarnation as part of it, it can actually be considered a punishment for a soul to have to live a lifetime as a specific animal. So do they have both the spirit and the soul? Well, based off of just that alone, I would say yes, they have both. Because you got to look at it from the same aspect of the spirit being the breath of life and the will of that animal, and the soul being the driving force behind whatever nature that animal has. Because you have, I'll use pit bulls for example. You have pit bulls out there that could be classified as they're soulless because they're mean, they're aggressive, they attack people, they attack other dogs. And then you have those that are just absolute, even though they look mean, they're absolutely big babies when it comes down to it. So do they have a soul? Absolutely.
When it comes to that choice of whether to be mean or good, I don't think that's of a soul perspective. I think that's more of an option of an animal or a man to do good or bad. Because I think that choice is there already.
Right, but what drives that choice, though? That's the main question: is what's the driving force behind that choice that they're making? Is it a soul, or is it their brain? Because I mean, we said that the soul controls emotions. So if you're making that choice based off an emotion, then therefore you have to have a soul going off based off the information that we said earlier. Of the soul controls the emotions, or has a part in control of emotions that you feel.
And until this day, we still don't understand how really the brain really works. We're still dumb on that subject. So there's a lot to the brain that we have to give credit for that which so undiscovered still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the average human only uses 10% of their brain.
That's what they say.
And going back to what Patsy said here, breaking a wild horse, what's the makeup of a stallion? When we break the spirit, it becomes in bondage. Well, okay. When they're saying breaking a wild horse, basically it's the makeup of that horse that has never had human contact to be wild and want to have its freedom.
Domesticated.
Right. And so when it comes time to basically get that horse used to somebody riding it and having it comply to what we are wanting that horse to do, then that's what's considered breaking its spirit. But it's more or less getting that horse to comply with what we're wanting it to do. And but yes, it still has its own spirit. It's always going to have that no matter what. But yeah, I don't know how to properly describe it, except that the term breaking a wild horse it's not really breaking its spirit, so to say. It's just getting it to comply.
Now, this is where I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to, again, approach the same question. Do animals possess a soul? And in my opinion, and in my estimation, all life possesses those three aspects. They possess body, spirit, and soul. Okay? All life does. There are animals, okay, who are like we are an animal. We are an actually animal species. We have instinct.
Soul and spirit is
Multiple instincts.
every human being has a soul and a body.
Animal. We have instinct.
Soul and spirit is
Multiple instinct.
every human being has a soul and a body.
Why are we have instinct.
Soul and spirit is
Multiple instinct.
every human being has a soul and a body.
We have instinct. There's a
Spirit is every human being has a soul and a body.
We're having technical difficulties here. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I do not understand what's going on here.
Whoa, hold on. I'm getting bad echo here.
Difficulties here. We're having a repeat.
Whoa, I'm getting bad echo here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to end the show at this point.
Whoa, I'm getting bad echo here.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the inconvenience, end the show at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, for the inconvenience, end the show at this point.